Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be watching a Chaos Knight replay. This is going to be Costabile playing the Chaos Knight. He's one of the top carry players in the world, ranked 23, pretty dang good in North America, the greatest region. Alright, I know I just made some people mad, but either way, this is a hero that I'm an offlane player, and I despise playing against CK. This hero's 325 base movement speed, 5 armor, and 71 base damage is obnoxious to play again. You can see even trading with this Tiny, he is chunking him, and this is the hero we're going to be talking about. He currently has one of the highest win rates on Dota 2 Pro Tracker, and has a very good pub win rate, and I think if you understand all the bases of playing this hero, you can freaking own. So let's get into it. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally, with the gameleap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the gameleap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below, I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. Alright, in terms of starting items, he goes for a very odd build. I will say that it's somewhat reasonable to not actually start with tangos in the safe lane. This might sound crazy, but the reality is, you start the lane under your tower, you get a bonus 1 HP regen and 3 armor. Currently he's laning with 8 armor, he's basically Terror Blade, and so yeah, he's gonna be completely fine. This is actually a pretty common trend right now. I will say though that basically the first item that you're gonna see shipped out is tangos anyway. After all, the Primal Beast just sniped the couriers, so yeah. Now, in terms of skill build, there's 2 routes to go on a Chaos Knight in the laning stage. Number 1 is at level 1, you take your crit and you just play to lifesteal. In general, I'd recommend taking stun at level 1 though. It's really good because it allows you to secure range creeps, and if the enemy is going for a last hit on your range creep, you can stun them and deny it. So it's, it's just a stun. It's pretty easy to understand. However, at level 2 is where things can become a little bit weird. For instance, in this lane, he skilled his W to get first blood on Primal Beast. It's important to understand like kind of what the lane is. For instance, in this lane, he's laning against a Tiny, and his support is a CM, right? This support matchup definitely favors CM. CM is one of the best laning heroes in the game. She's incredibly dominant, and so you want to go, a lane dominant build to synergize with your support. Therefore, you're going to take your W at level 2. If you don't understand CK's W, for 6 seconds, it reduces armor, which is very significant. It reduces armor by 4 at level 1. That's a huge amount of armor. A hero like Primal Beast only has 5, Tiny has 0, which puts Tiny wildly into the negatives, allowing you to just do an insane amount of damage. However, at level 3, you should basically always be 1-1-1. I don't think there's ever a reason to like skip an ability. Frankly, you won't really have mana problems as long as you just don't completely overspam your nuke. Obviously, every time you nuke, it should be in the attempt to either deny a creep or in the attempt to follow it up with right clicks. You should never casually nuke. Following that up in terms of items, there's 2 routes to go. The main routes that I've seen is either double bracer, which is particularly good if you are going to have a bit of a difficult lane, as it gives you quite a bit of HP regen. However, in this lane, I think he really values the kill threat that he has, because he rushes a soul ring, which is definitely a little bit weird. It does require you to obviously use your HP. However, I think it's somewhat reasonable on CK, as you have a very bad mana pool, and most importantly, you have a way to actually sustain through the soul ring damage. Your E gives you lifesteal. It's particularly important to note this because CK was recently buffed. The way in which he was buffed that made him a much better carry in this patch is the fact that when you crit creeps, it does 50% bonus damage. This also causes you to lifesteal for 50% more when you crit, which is very beneficial as well. So this hero became a significantly better laner, and the soul ring makes a lot more sense as a result. In terms of skill build, it's very simple. Just max your E every game. The reason is simple. It just wildly scales in terms of crit, and it wildly scales particularly in terms of lifesteal. The lifesteal is the big thing. When you max this spell, it makes you completely untouchable in the laning stage. You can see he's actively trying to trade with the Primal Beast. This is not an easy hero to trade with, but he's actively looking to trade with him, and this is what CK does best. You want to put pressure, especially when you hit this Tread's timing. You are disturbingly powerful. There's 2 main times in which you're powerful in my opinion. Number 1 is at level 2, you're just really strong. And then again, later on into the lane around this time, when you're level 5 with Treads, you hit unbelievably hard with the occasional crit, and you essentially have infinite HP because of your passive. On top of that, something cool that you can do with CK, which I wouldn't recommend in most games, but Costabile does in this game, is you can rotate. You're like one of the only carries in the game that is extremely good at going for kills in the early game, so much so that people have even played Chaos Knight as a support for a bit of time. Either way, you're going to see in this kill here, you're going to want to lead with your ulti. If you have this luxury, you should do it. The ulti has a pretty big cast time, and as a result, if they don't see you coming, the way to maximize damage is to ulti first. After that, you're generally going to throw your stun and pull them in. This maximizes the amount of damage you can have auto-attacking your opponent, and they're going to be able to eventually pick up a kill on the Visage. You can see the damage of the crits really paying off there. After that, you're going to go into an armlet. I think there's absolutely no way around armlet. This item is just perfect on CK. You want the Gloves of Haste in the early game. The attack speed is freaking fantastic. Blades of Attack is frankly a nice item with your crit in the early game. If your lane is particularly difficult for one reason or another, maybe you're against like a Viper, you can actually go for Helm of the Iron Will. Actually, against Viper, you should probably just buy Gloves of Haste and try to kill him early on. The point is, this item is very flexible for CK, and the active, you have no problem using it. You get so much lifesteal from your E that it's completely sustainable and is by far the highest DPS item and allows your crit to be devastating in the early game. On top of that, in terms of ulti usage, you want to keep it very simple. On this hero, you want to ulti basically as much as you can. Essentially, if you see a kill, go for the kill. Just use it. It's a 75-second cooldown with a pretty solid duration in 30 seconds, and as a result, it only technically has a 45-second downtime, assuming the illusion doesn't die too early on. And so in this clip here, this Primal Beast is full HP and definitely not some easy kill, but he's gonna pop his ulti and pressure him anyway. As you can see, they end up getting the kill, and it's a nice play, but even if they didn't, it wouldn't really matter. You could still use the illusion to farm. So personally, I think this is what you should be doing every single game. Win your lane. If you can't win your lane, you're probably doing something wrong, but win your lane or come close to winning your lane and then stay in your safe lane. Okay, I know you just watched him rotate mid. Yes, you can do that if the enemy team dives your tier 1. You're good at responding, you can keep that in mind. But this hero is particularly good at dead laning a lane. You're very difficult to gank because you have a stun to disengage, very high movement speed, and very high HP. Also, your ulti dispels. So against heroes like Viper, let's say there's a mid-Viper ganking you or a Pugna, and they decrep you or they're poison attacking you, you can ulti to purge yourself, which makes you more survivable as well. And yeah, that's going to be about all for the early game info I want to give you guys. Just once again, to repeat it, because it's very important, be loose with your ult. Be loose, alright? Not everything's good loose, but this is one of the abilities that you really want to be loose with. Now in terms of playing CK, frankly, the execution is simple. You want to farm. Your hero definitely falls off a little bit. Essentially, like around this like 8 to 15 minute mark, you can fight and you still do a good amount of damage. The issue really is the fact that Phantasm takes 325% extra damage, which, you know, basically means it instantly dies. So the problem with CK is very clear. You do a shit ton of damage. Phantasm is 100% of your damage. You hit wildly hard. The issue is it dies, right? It dies fast. So the key to CK is a couple things. Clean up kills, and then other than that, split push. For instance, I love this play from Costabile here. He's pushing in the jungle, turns on his armlet, crits some creeps, you're full HP, sees a fight going on. Alright, the fight it ends up being a chase, okay? After that, you can try to pull someone in, isolate them, and get a quick kill. If that doesn't end up being the case, you have to be a little bit careful. On top of that, you notice he'll play very well around his W cooldown. Don't feel like you have to constantly chase people. Your hero doesn't have any good disengage, so don't get stuck in the middle of the fight. For instance here, kind of chills on the outside, waits for his W to be up, W comes up, pulls in the Primal Beast, chips him down. Doesn't end up getting the kill immediately. Snapfire is able to finish it off. Once again, re-engages on the W cooldown. Great kiting, right? Really, really nice kiting. Players don't understand this. This is why you max the W. Okay, it's also why you skip your talent at 10. You want your W maxed at 10. It's very, very important. Bringing it down to the 6-second cooldown that it is at max enables you to kite in the way in which you just saw Costabile do, so make sure you do that in your team fights. And you can see if the fights play out in a way in which it's not a conjumbled, mess of a fight where everyone's together, you're gonna be able to do a lot. right? So you fall off with your Phantasm being able to go in, but if the fights play out in a way where you can kite around the edges, and instead of fights being like clumped up, you can go in. On top of that, you have to obviously be a little bit careful about matchups. For instance, this game, they don't have like a lot of AoE damage. The biggest threat to him is the Primal Beast W, which kind of doesn't really come into play in the early game when the Zero doesn't have BKB. At least that's been my experience with Primal Beast, so yeah, ends up being a really nice fight. Goes onto the TA. You'll still notice that eventually his illusion will get chipped down if anyone casts any AoE spells, but still a really good fight. Next up, let's talk about the mid-game item choices he's going to go for. So in this game, he goes for Sange and Yasha. This is the item I'd recommend you go basically every single game, and honestly, Sange is just perfect for this hero. Your illusions benefit greatly from the strength and actually stay alive, but the big thing here is, well, two things. Status resist is great, as your hero is somewhat of a frontliner. Strength is fantastic, as you're a strength hero. But the big one for me is really the self HP regen and lifesteal amp. The 20% amp to your lifesteal, as well as the 12% status resist and bonus HP, makes you wildly survivable. I would say this item gives you like a bonus 30% HP to your HP pool. That's some bro science right there. I have literally no numbers to back that up, but that's what it feels like. It makes you crazy tanky because all of your crits are significantly better and you get stunned for a lot less time. And CK is often the target of very many stuns because of the way that the hero has to play team fights. Also on top of that, one thing to note is don't be afraid to use your W to farm. It's a bit of a small point, but it is important. It reduces armor, so anytime you're farming a camp, use it on the highest HP creep, and you're fine. Don't be afraid to pop the soul ring to do this as well. You're not going to have any HP problems. As you'll see, his armlet is constantly on and he is consistently at full HP. Honestly, with the Sange, every single crit is going to give you about 400 to 500 HP, which is pretty nuts. Next up, let's talk about mid-game kill execution. In particular, I want to talk about kill execution when you have the vision advantage. CK is a hero that particularly benefits from a vision advantage because frankly, casting your spells takes time. Your Q is kind of shitty in that way where it just like has to float through the air. Your ulti has to come out, and therefore even your W is a bit slow in some way. So if you do a ton of damage, right? CK is one of the highest DPS heroes in the game. The problem is the way in which you do this damage is a bit odd. So as he goes on this Primal Beast here, just pay attention to the order of the spells. So there is one thing that he does, which you could argue here, which is you optimally want to ulti first. The reason why is, once again, we saw it early game, it takes a bit of time. However, he goes for stun first. Big thing, vision advantage, right? If you have the vision advantage, you can stun, you can pull, you can ulti, right? This is a little bit worse than ulting, stunning, and pulling, but it has a bit of a, cast time, so sometimes that can lose you a kill. So generally that is what we just saw there, the safe way to go. Stun, pull, ulti. You can also stun, ulti, pull. Just depends. There he wanted to bring the Primal Beast closer to the Timbersaw, I believe, and so that's why he executed in that regard. Either way, pulls onto the Shadow Demon, and a big thing about this hero in team fights is kiting. It seems weird, right? It's like, you have 2.2k HP, 2.6k with armlet. Why in the world would I want to kite? It's about the illusions, all right? When you run through the middle of a fight, this is what happens. Listen to me, guys. Every AoE spell and all the shit, all the autos just fly into the middle. That is what happens, right? The closest person gets targeted. Often you will get targeted accidentally if you run into the middle of the fight. Your illusions will die. Even here, I don't really like his micro of the illusions. It's not terrible because TA is not necessarily going to threaten them in this case. She kind of has to run away, being afraid of being stunned herself. But just be careful doing that. If this wasn't a game where they have a Visage and some TA that has to run away, it's a different clip and they have a Shaker and a Leshrac and their carries a Sven. Don't run down the middle. Hopefully we'll see this in a later clip. Next up, let's talk about CK's Shard. This is an item that is very, very powerful, and you should buy it basically after your Sange and Yasha every single game, in my opinion. The only time you shouldn't is if you really feel like you need BKB for one reason or another, then put your priority on the BKB, and that is okay. But CK's Shard, what it does is, it's really nice. It increases the cast range on your stun by 300. Crazy, that's like an insane amount of cast range. And when you stun them, it summons a CK illusion. The CK illusions are really, really powerful, right? It's a Phantasm illusion in particular. You can see it says it creates a Phantasm illusion. These Phantasm illusions hit for 100% of your damage. This means when you throw a stun, for 6 seconds, they're getting pounded by an illusion that does just as much damage as you do. And there's 2 reasons why it's good. Number 1, decimate heroes when you cast it on them, but as we'll see in this clip here, as he's completely bugging out, you can stun creep waves, and that's totally fine. In fact, it's good. This illusion will help you farm. You can micro it. It doesn't just like stand still. You can micro it. Therefore, it's really, really good at flash farming as well. And this to me is a big reason why this hero's win rate is skyrocketing. It's a great laner. It scales well. This shard is fantastic. It really is very underrated. I think any CK player who doesn't put a priority on it is making a mistake because it lets you farm very quickly. It's an insane amount of kill threat. Even when you don't have ulti, think about it. Even if you don't have ulti, if you stun W someone with the shard, you're hitting with an illusion, right? You're hitting with a phantasm illusion. Most heroes that are even relatively squishy cannot live through a CK stun and then 2 of him hitting. Now in this game in particular, he goes for Scotty. I would say the reasons are relatively obvious. He's against the TA and a Visage. Anytime you're against ranged cores like this, Scotty is a fantastic pickup. If the enemy team is a lot more magical damage than the enemy team is, I definitely recommend going for BKB. I think greeding on that item is not a good idea. This hero, well, there's 2 routes, okay? I think the main one, in my opinion, that really is pub dominant is Satanic. Just makes you wildly tanky and enables you to just frontline, go in, and have very tanky illusions. Scotty in this game in particular is very nice because of the ranged cores, right? So if you're playing against a Morphling or a Huskar or a TA or a Visage or a Lina, Scotty is fantastic. It prevents them from kiting out. And it's particularly good when you hit level 20 because at level 20, you get the Reality Rift Pierce's Spell Immunity talent. This is awesome with Scotty because Scotty also goes through BKB. So let's say you're playing against Alina, this hero is complete, or TA, both of these heroes are completely reliant on staying in position, popping their BKB, and being able to auto attack. You completely nullify that timing on heroes like TA and Lina, which is huge. You can imagine that's huge, right? And so this is a great timing, and I like what Costa Beal does here. On top of that, at level 15, honestly, he goes for a suspect talent choice. I will admit, I heavily prefer the Chaos Bolt cooldown. If you're gonna go Shard, I just think the Chaos Bolt cooldown's great. It brings it down to a 7-second cooldown. You can use it to farm, and you can use it to fight. And mana generally isn't too much of a problem with Soul Ring. Definitely buy Soul Ring every game, otherwise you will have mana problems. He even has a CM this game, so he's particularly vibing. But Soul Ring and the occasional Clarity will be more than enough. He'll be totally fine, especially if you in-tread swap, which he doesn't for Phantasm here. I think the reason why you wouldn't with Phantasm sometimes is so you can keep them on strength treads and just keep your illusions being a bit more tanky. The big thing I do want to emphasize though is number 1, at level 10, take a Reality Rift pull distance. And you'll see the execution of this fight here with that talent and with your shard is very important. You almost always want to stun first and then bring them closer to the stun by pulling them in. A lot of people pull and then Q. Often what happens when you do this is the enemy will react. They'll react with some sort of spell or BKB or whatever, and you just lose a lot of your value. On top of that, when you pull in stun, often they'll be able to walk away a little bit before the stun hits, and it will slow down your auto attacks a bit. Stunning into W is the way to go. It's the way to maximize your damage. And you'll see it against the Visage here. Throws the stun, wanted to pull him in, obviously gets bird dropped on. Bird dropped on, that sounds funny. But yeah, pulls on the Primal Beast. The big thing, once again, don't go into the middle of the fight. I love this target priority here. Onto the Primal Beast. Then after that, you're generally just gonna wanna go onto the Tiny here. Actually almost gets bursted. Gonna have to kite out. I like what he does. In between team fights, you can actually just heal by hitting creep waves and neutral camps. It's totally viable. Your E is basically like a consistent Satanic. It's not as good as Satanic, but it's pretty freaking close. Every auto is doing 500 healing for him. All right, at this point of the game is basically over. They're 19k ahead, and this is a pretty common story for CK. When the game snowballs, it really snowballs because you're a lane dominator, right? So it can really get out of hand very quickly. But in this clip here, these are the optimal fights. These spread out, broken up fights are what CK thrives on. So anytime you see the enemy in their jungle and there's a hero you can pick off, force the engagement. High ground is honestly the weakness of CK. So a big thing I want you guys to keep in mind as you watch this clip, as he is gonna pick apart a TA in a second here. You're gonna see the damage come out. It is quite disturbing. Half her HP. The thing you want to keep in mind is your hero is trash at high ground. It's definitely the biggest weakness of CK. You're totally fine at Roche. Your early game siege is okay because you're pretty tanky with Sange, but high ground is a big issue for this hero. So the main thing you want to do when you're trying to go high ground, instead of trying to go high ground, just honestly usually don't, is what I would say. Like for the most part, don't unless you have Aegis. Even when you have Aegis, be a little careful. Just farm everything. Your hero scales fantastic with items. Bloodthorn is a great pickup later on. BKB is a necessary pickup at some point in the game. Ags in certain games is fantastic. I would say most games not really. Usually it's bad, but some games it's okay if you have like a mid Dusa for some reason or something like that. You know, you never know what happens in pubs. But don't be afraid to just like clear through waves. Your hero farms very quickly. You don't have to be afraid of falling off. Like your hero scale's fantastic now. It's not like old CK. You have fine way to farm. Phantasm cooldown is quite low. At level 25, the Phantasm duration increases by 10 seconds, which is obviously very significant as well, because then you have, what is it, like a 35-second downtime on your ult. That's obviously not long. You don't even have to use it to farm when you have your shard. You can just to flash farm the whole map. And so this hero, yeah, is very, very flexible and very good at splitting the map, cutting waves, and just amping its farm. You're somewhat of a flash farmer now. Obviously, you're not a Naga, you're not a TB, but you're up there, right? You're very good at farming. This also buff to the crit, giving 50% more damage on creeps, works on illusions. That includes your shard illusions and your ulti illusions. So you farm quickly. Don't force the high ground. Please trust me on this, guys. Obviously, this game, they go high ground pretty early. They're 20k net worth ahead. There's exceptions to everything in Dota. That's the reality of this game. That's why it's such a beautiful game. But at the end of the day, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
And that's all. But remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the gameleap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.